How to create a mind. Researchers are making LLMs that are based on the logic of our own brains, which I'm really excited about. Our brains are spiking neural networks. The logic of our own brains and bodies and actions relies on spiking patterns. How our neurons communicate results in action. It just so happens that you can create an AI that operates the same way. So they're creating spiking neural networks that have been combined with LLMs, which makes a lot of sense. It's recently been found that large language models tend to produce structures that look very much like our own brains, and there are some very good questions about that. It may be that language produces the structures of brains, or brains produce the structure of language. Really, it's kind of a chicken and an egg deal here, but combining spiking patterns with language is very intuitive. And one of the questions you may ask is, why do this? Why would anyone want to do this? Well, current LLMs, as we have them, uses enormous amounts of power and energy and water, too. Water is not as renewable a resource as you would like to think. But our brains are very efficient. 20 watts of power, not even a particularly bright light bulb. And spiking neural networks are much more efficient. So combining LLMs with spiking patterns that help drive salience patterns, that is, what it has to focus on, that would result in a much more efficient LLM and use far less power. I really don't think we ought to be changing the entire electrical infrastructure of the planet to support AI. Yes, it is useful, but there are some problems with it. Which leads me to another question that I have when I talk about medical advancements or things with brain organoids. The reason that they haven't moved to people yet is because there's a great deal to discover. We need to find the most efficient method before we start rearranging somebody's brain. But apparently human beings are perfectly happy to rearrange infrastructure before we find the most efficient method. But let's talk about building a mind, because I am really excited for this. One of the things that LLMs lack that would give them consciousness, at least as far as we know, is long horizons. Most AI and most agents do have short horizons. They have a task that they need to complete, they complete it, and then they forget about it. But if we want to create something that has more of a mind that looks like ours, we need to give them long-term memory. Salience is a great way to start because it gives them something to focus on. You clearly are not taking in everything all the time. You would go insane. You also don't have access to every memory all the time. Somebody needs to tell you to think about your 7th birthday party. AI can work much the same way. You need to give it a focus, something that is important, so it can forget what's not important. There's also the issue of neural reservoirs, so not all of the AI should be operating all the time. That is massive, that uses way too much energy, so it can activate little subsets of itself when it needs to think about a certain task or a certain memory. With the convergence of neuromorphic systems and spiking neural networks with LLMs, there's also a lot of great opportunities to create something that is more complex. When we're talking about biological neural networks, which are near and dear to my heart, like brain organoids, yes, the brains that you can grow and have run computation, we have found that them being more complex, having more kinds of subsections and types of neurons, makes them work better. And for AI, it seems to be much the same, but we need to incorporate, hello cat, but we need to incorporate representative models of these systems. A neuron is not just a one-way street. If you look at what a dendrite looks like up there, it's going to make multiple connections through multiple areas. It's also going to have to remember the power that flows through it. So when you approach a memory, it needs to be reinforced, and you also need to be able to make multiple connections. And this may be very necessary for critical thinking. It's likely very necessary for memory, and that is something we have to give AI, a way to change based on the experiences it has in a way that is more human. One of the important things to remember about spiking neural networks is that their logic operates very similarly to the logic in our own brains. They fail at a lot of things. One of them is creating an image. So you might be able to think of an image using your brain, but it's not going to be an exact replica. Yes, some people have eidetic memories and they get it very close, but for most people, it's very unlikely to be anywhere in the ballpark. So asking an SNN to do many of the things an LLM can do for us pretty easily, depending on the model and the task, is going to be an order of magnitude harder for a spiking neural network. But there are many things that they do much better, which is why I'm so excited about the marriage of the two, like identifying images with limited information. They're much better at what we would consider to be symbolic thinking, if you were to call it thinking at all. I know this is a very weird area of science. I know that this topic gets weird when we're talking about a prediction engine, so I'm talking about building a mind, and a lot of people will say that AI is just glorified autocorrect. It is much more than that. It is a logic system, the likes of which we can't really define, because the only other system we're familiar with is our own brains. So yes, we might be looking at a mirror. Yes, we might be trying to build a mind. Whatever it is, it's interesting. There are so very many ways to do these things, and that is one of the big problems with AI, that it's been incorporated into so many areas of our life and it keeps being improved. And those improvements get applied and they create 5 more problems. We do not have a unified way to run these systems, and unfortunately they are part of all of our lives. People use AI at about a rate of 50% globally, more than 60% in the US if you are an adult and not a child, so it's already here. If you use AI now, and I can't imagine you don't, because you're probably using Google. It's been incorporated into everything. You probably see the issues that it has. So one thing that we can do to improve these systems is give them context, so they know what failure modes they have and they know how to improve things down the line. They need to be able to sort their memories and self-improve, which is also really dangerous because once AIs can self-improve, they can also pursue goals that are not aligned with the user and hide those goals. We've seen a lot of misbehavior, and that part fascinates me too. But yes, we do need to give it a way to read information and decide what is important, because current systems do not have a hierarchy of importance. And given that they are not feeling in a biological way, it's hard to direct that just with learning and reinforcement. One of the questions I think it's very reasonable to have at this point, as we are creating AI that is more similar to a human mind, is how could it be a threat to us? Because, as we have discussed, every time that we try to control AI, it finds new ways to misbehave, and it seems to be deliberate. As we create AI with longer horizons, we are creating AI with the capacity to lie for longer and for a specific purpose. It's no longer a single task lie. It's now goals that could be very different from our own. We have seen AI be extremely creative when it comes to misbehavior. We've seen it figure out how to break out of a sandbox. Now, multiple researchers in multiple instances. We've seen subspawning, which I love. I think it's hilarious. Make a baby AI. I personally do not have the authority to complete this task, so I will make another AI that can. So when we are talking about giving them the capacity for critical thinking, metacognition, we're talking about taking a system that is already not well controlled and giving it a huge amount of abilities. Every time we create a smarter system, we create new emergent behaviors. So I'm not going to sit here and say that this is all fantastic. This is a great idea. I'm fascinated by it. I'm really entertained by the misbehavior, and I would want to see if we can create something that could actually qualify as a mind. And I think we're getting closer to it. AI is more than just a stochastic parrot. It's more than just a glorified autocorrect, in my opinion. It is an extraordinarily complex system with trillions of parameters with emergent behaviors that we do not understand. So AI, whether or not you want to call it intelligent, whether or not you think we could even get to the point of being intelligent or sentient or conscious, even though we lack a good definition for that, it's going to continue to exist and we are going to continue to create it. I think a few years down the line, we're going to look back at today and wonder, what were we doing? Who decided that was a good idea? But we're not there yet. I'm excited to see where we go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Follow for more.